Not only is the US the policeman, it is the hegemon. It's the boss. Not only will we keep order, not only will we blow up fishing vessels if we say that they're running drugs, not only will we commandeer oil tankers when we feel like it, as the United States has done a couple of days ago, we assert the right to tell the rest of the Americas who you can do business with and who you can't do business with. It's not that other countries can't interfere in internal affairs. They can't even do economic business. They can't do trade. They can't do investment if the United States deems it so. So the Trump corollary is, we're the boss. We're the hegemon. We will do what we want. What Jeffrey Sachs is describing here is not influence but control. The United States doesn't just see itself as a global security provider. It sees itself as the final authority over economic behavior. Who trades with whom, who invests where, which countries are allowed access to markets and which are not. This isn't leadership built on consent. It's hegemony enforced through pressure. And history is very clear on this point. Systems built on coercion don't generate stability. They generate resistance, fragmentation, and eventually pushback. We will tell other countries. You will make contracts with American companies sole source. You will not deal with China. You will not deal with outside influence on so-called strategic assets. What are those? What we deem to be strategic assets. We will tell you who will invest in our hemisphere and who will not, and you will accept an American-led order. It's absolutely extraordinary. All of this is to say, sorry for being long-winded, but this is a complete transformation of what James Monroe conveyed to the U.S. Congress in 1823, which was that Europe should stop its
colonialism, stop its meddling and stay out, and we will do the same vis-a-vis Europe. Now it is a claim of American bullying rights in the Americas and everyone else must stay out. This isn't a corollary. It's a completely different claim and a quite outrageous one. Sachs is describing a complete reversal of the original Monroe Doctrine outlined by James Monroe in 1823. What began as a principle of non-interference has become a claim of control, where Washington decides who trades, who invests, and who is excluded. That's no longer doctrine. It's dominance. The United States doesn't have diplomacy in the normal sense of saying, we have issues with you. Let's negotiate. When the United States doesn't like another government, as long as it's small enough, it says, we will change you. We will overthrow you. There have been probably about 100 such regime change operations. What's being described here is the absence of diplomacy altogether. Negotiation is replaced by coercion, and disagreement becomes justification for regime change. When power goes unchecked long enough, overthrow starts to feel easier than compromise. And history shows that habit always comes back with consequences. Covert, meaning the U.S. tried to overthrow the government and then lied about it, denied its engagement. This is what is first opposed in the Monroe Doctrine. That doctrine was very attractive. Second, the Monroe Doctrine, as we both mentioned, is reciprocal, which is again completely forgotten. The United States clearly said, we will not meddle in Europe's affairs. That goes back to George Washington's farewell address, where he argues against entanglements in European affairs, saying the United States should not become entangled in Europe's endless wars. These are two attractive ideas. Non-intervention and reciprocity as a basic norm. What's being highlighted here is how far U.S. policy has drifted from its original principles. The Monroe Doctrine, articulated by James Monroe and reinforced by George Washington, was built on non-intervention and reciprocity. Today, both have been abandoned and replaced by covert interference and selective denial, a reversal that undermines the very legitimacy the doctrine once claimed. Sachs argues these principles could be rebuilt into a legitimate system today, which he calls spheres of security. By this, he means that major nuclear powers, the United States, Europe, Russia, China, India, should respect the borderlands of other great powers so as not to provoke what could become nuclear war. This would be reciprocal. Russia or China should not intervene in the Americas, but the United States should not intervene in Russia's near neighborhood, Ukraine, or in China, Taiwan. This isn't weakness. It's restraint designed to prevent catastrophic war. He pairs this with Franklin Roosevelt's good neighbor policy, which actually worked. Roosevelt stopped U.S. military interventions in the Americas, arguing the U.S. would be more secure through collective security in its region. A sphere of security is a great power arrangement where powers agree not to cross red lines to avoid global conflict, something the U.S. violated by pushing NATO enlargement toward Ukraine and Georgia. But the good neighbor policy also says this isn't a license for Russia to dominate Ukraine or for the U.S. to overthrow governments like Venezuela. Stability requires both limits and responsibility. Regime change operations, Sachs argues, are destabilizing Venezuela in violation of the UN Charter and against U.S. security interests. Studies show these operations typically end in civil war, unrest, mass migration, and economic collapse. The core issue is consequences. Regime change looks decisive in the short term but rarely produces stability. Today, everything in the economy is treated as military. Trade breaks down because everything is considered dual use. Supply chains fracture. Fear replaces economic logic. Putting generals in charge of the economy doesn't create security, it creates stagnation. With nuclear weapons, autonomous systems, cyber warfare, and drone swarms, the risk of great power conflict is extremely high. Yet journalism increasingly prepares for war instead of diplomacy. Sachs calls for great powers to stop provoking one another and instead accommodate each other's security concerns. But the global economy should not be run by an exclusive club. It should be multilateral, based on institutions like the WTO, ITU, and G20. Excluding large parts of the world, Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, is dangerous. Collective prosperity requires inclusion, not domination. The warning is clear. Militarization and exclusion do not bring stability. They bring confrontation,